Well, this is going to be a fun one. Today we have Hannah, the property geek, on the Prime People podcast. Hannah's somebody I met on Clubhouse. We spent a lot of time together in different rooms, but I was one of the people out of the thousands I met on Clubhouse that was just a real human being. Translates into her socials. She's killing it on Instagram, speaking on stages with friends of mine. Glenda Baker was actually on the Prime People podcast last week. So you're in good company with Glenda. And I know you just spoke at a conference with her. So we're going to talk about that. Before we even introduce you, Hannah, I'm going to introduce you by bringing up your Instagram profile. So everybody watching the episode, please do this. Go to Hannah_the property geek. I am going to ask her why they call her that right out of the gate, and go give her a follow. I want you to look very specifically at the way that her grid is presented. This is how most people should be doing social media. You learn a lot about Hannah by seeing the grid. You see that she's a real estate agent, that she's traveling, that she's speaking, but you see that she's a human being. I think a lot of people are pretending to be people they're not on social. This is why I brought Hannah on. I think she's authentically herself. And check out her reels. Her reels are hilarious. 1, 2, they do exceptionally well. These are big, big, big numbers. I know much larger accounts that don't even get this amount of reach. And I think it's because she's built a really good organic audience. So I'm going to pick her brain on some of these items. But Hannah, I don't want to make this too much of an intro. First and foremost, why do they call you the property geek?
So that's actually my team name.
Okay.
We started the team about 7 years ago, me and 2 other ladies, which is who I was on stage with last week at the conference.
Give me a shout out. Who are the ladies so I know who they are?
Karen Pancook and Sarah Ruland.
Okay.
And we started it with just like idea of the Property Geeks name came out because we wanted to start a team. But of course, like everybody were like, oh, we don't know what we would name it. And Karen Pancook was the one that was kind of like my unofficial mentor. So we're like, her name is super odd. And we're like, we're not making a team off of your name. It's terrible, like to try to pronounce that every time. So we were going back and forth. And she always used to say like, I'm geeking out, you know? So we always like, oh, yeah, we're geeking out in real estate. And that's where the Property Geeks came out of, like as a short version. And I really wanted to brand with it. And of course, like our main focus when we first started was branding. So why not better way of just naming myself the Property Geek on my handles.
I like that. It stands out, right? Like, and I do think you see it and I know exactly who it is when I hear that name. And I like the word association because I mean, it tells you exactly who you are. But give me a little bit of background on yourself. To like, where did you actually grow up and how'd you end up in real estate?
So I grew up in Rosemont, Minnesota, which is just like south of the Twin Cities. And I was in the service industry, my early adulthood, and just like had gotten like everybody else and their mother, like a marketing degree, right?
Sure.
Nothing with it.
I was in hospitality and I have a marketing degree. So
yeah,
makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. So like everybody else. And so I just got fed up with the industry out of nowhere and went on Craigslist and found a job for marketing consulting for realtors.
Cool.
And it was back, you know, when Facebook was, there's no ads or anything, right? It was like, you should have a Facebook account was basically all that social media was.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. And then I got,
what year are we talking here?
Let's see, I would have gotten that job in 2014.
Okay, cool.
And then shortly after that, I actually found I was pregnant with my daughter. And so like any pregnant girl is smart, go into the broker's office and say, nobody's taking my advice and you're paying me for nothing. They're not doing anything. Basically firing myself. And luckily, he's a gentle soul. And he was like, you're right. You should go get your own license. And we're going to help you get your license. And so that's how I actually started being a realtor. It was not really something I set out to do. But then once I was like, thought about it, had that idea like kind of planted in my head, I was like, sure. Oh, I could market myself a hell of a lot better than I'm trying to teach these agents how to market themselves. Right. So that's kind of how it all started. So I waddled my pregnant butt into real estate school and just knocked it out in like 3 weeks. And there I was licensed.
That's epic. So I actually want to pause on that for a second. I think there's a little gem there hidden for a lot of agents that have been licensed for a long time. Like we were licensed in 2012. Same thing. I actually fought my wife kicking and screaming. I didn't want to be an agent. I was like, they don't work hard. I don't want to be a greaseball on a golf course. Like I was in marketing, right? I did hospitality. I had that job. And she convinced me that like, no, if you apply these same work ethics to this industry where people don't work hard, you could really make something cool happen. What were those key things that the agents were not implementing that you were like, if you would just do this, like, what do you think, like 2 or 3 of the simple things they could have done to make a big difference in their business?
I think at that time, It was a very different vibe, like generationally,
Okay.
right? So a lot of them were from in the industry 15, 20 years, where postcards and all these, print marketing things were really the only thing, beyond just SOI, right? Just like actual
Mhm.
going places and things like that. There was no real, like, social media was like a joke. It was like, okay, whatever. Like, no one's
I'm
ever,
never going to have a Facebook. I'm never going to have an Instagram. I'm never going to have a TikTok. Right. Yep.
it's so stupid, right? And so nobody really was connecting with it. And again, it wasn't known as like an advertising tool. It was simply you go, like, it was for college kids, right? Like Facebook came out for college kids. So they were like rolling their eyes like, okay, I don't even have a Facebook. Can you set up my Facebook profile? And I think it was that lack of idea that like your personality is your brand. It was you're still your brokerage's brand, or you are your, whatever, your team's brand. And I think that was the biggest difference, is that just like the mindset behind branding was just that old school mindset,
Yep.
right? Which still works for a lot of people. But I was like one of the first classes that even learned that social media is going to be a huge marketing tool, right? So it was kind of, I'm 22 walking in going, this is going to be the new marketing thing. And they're all like, okay. And like e-cards were big. Like I
Yeah.
always joked, I'm like, they hired me and half of them just wanted me to send a bunch of e-cards out. I'm like, e-cards are not it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
I could understand that technology seems great. They would understand it because it's a transition from, say, email to social. I think we've gone into a landscape where media moved so heavily into social that now some of the old school tactics are finding their way into social. But where did you see that bridge for yourself in terms of, okay, now I got licensed, these agents weren't doing that? Like, what were the first things that you did when you became an agent to start branding yourself or getting that vision of where you wanted to take your business?
Yeah, so my biggest goal when I got licensed was like, I knew that my sphere at the time, 22, were not necessarily buying homes or weren't going to be those exact clients immediately, right?
Sure.
But my entire goal was like, okay, I need to make sure that anybody that knows me thinks of real estate, they think of me, Hannah Smith. And every time they think of Hannah Smith, they think of real estate, because that connection is where the thought process happens, right? When they do think of buying or selling, they have to think of me right away.
Yeah.
So I had no money. I had probably had negative money, literally, at the time. Plus, I was growing a child inside of me. So I was like, what am I going to do that I could actually succeed? Because everything that all the other agents around me were basically doing was pouring money into print marketing, pouring money into a bench or whatever there was. I was like, I literally cannot do that. I even if I wanted to. So at the time, again, social media wasn't big and there wasn't as many features. So I was on Snapchat, and I would Snapchat on my story, because story was like a new thing. It was like after you could only send direct snaps. Now this was like, oh, you had a story for 24 hours. So I just started posting on there every day of like, I'm doing real estate stuff. Like, look at me,
Sure.
I'm a realtor. And that was literally all I did. And then I made a point to, every time I went out with friends, like I had to mention on real estate without being like super salesy and like annoying,
Yeah.
right? But
You just
like,
wanted to keep it top of mind, like, so you didn't forget to actually say it, right?
yeah, you didn't want to be a secret agent, right? Like, you wanted to make sure that you were coming across like, oh yeah, she's a realtor. Oh yeah, she's a realtor, every time I was around someone. So that's really what I did at just like everything I did, whether it be on like Snapchat or like Facebook or in person. It was just like these little tiny cues of like, I'm in real estate, and that was really the only thing I was actually able to do at the very beginning.
Super interesting. Now, let's jump forward into your story today. You've gotten a lot of traction, like I showed everybody on your Instagram account. At what point did that happen in your business?
I would say it probably, the growth started happening, was it 3 years ago when Reels started coming out or starting getting popular? That's when like the biggest growth happened. And when I started getting more like agent referrals and out of state referrals.
Cool.
But I was getting plenty of business from my social media efforts, like even when I had less than 1,000 followers, right? It was just about kind of putting that effort into relationships around the social media. It wasn't just like about wanting to grow and grow and grow. It just
Yep.
started organically happening. But I would say it really like skyrocketed when I started doing Reels and really just video, right? Like, I know agents are going to roll their eyes and be like, oh, here's another one saying you have to do video. But like literally when I started doing video, that was more than just the off the cuff 24-hour and you're gone kind of thing, and more like that evergreen video. That's when I really saw a big spike.
I love that you brought that up, because like one of the biggest things I tell people is it took me 10 years to develop any type of base, but I was doing deals 2013 to 2017 off the street of people. I watch everything you put out. I watch all your videos. I'm like, I probably had less than 2,000 or 3,000 followers, and like no comments on my videos. In my head, I was like, why don't you like it or like comment? And I'm like, hey, whatever, I'll take it. It's a win. And I think people get super distracted by the big numbers, the virality on TikTok, the virality on Instagram, when in reality, it is that consistent action over time, understanding that, you know, your stories are kind of like your vlog, right? People being BTS with you and feeling like they're seeing you every day. I don't necessarily post everything I post in my stories on my feed, but at the same time, I'm cognizant that there's an audience watching both. So now, like, strategy, I just pick your brain for my own self. I do this show even if it wasn't live. How do you construct your videos? Because you obviously put some thought into them. They're great in terms of how you shoot them, how you edit them. So what's your storyboarding process for creating your videos?
So I get asked this quite a bit, and I kind of giggle a little bit because I don't have this like robust, just like groundbreaking strategy. You know, I really don't. But I think it's just the matter of allowing my creativity to come out without being too harsh on myself.
Sure.
Right. Like, what I mean by that is like, I'll be scrolling myself and I'll hear an audio or I'll see something that just like sparks an idea. And if I mean, right, you're like probably laying in bed, like I'm not going to do it right that second, but I'm going to save that. And then what I do is I use my notes in my phone and I just type out the quick idea, right? Of like, oh, this reminds me of like dads at inspections, right? It could have been something working out or whatever, right? But like somehow my brain just like figured that out. And then I just kind of write it down and know that the next day, you know, when I'm like actually cute and like getting dressed and, you know, ready for the day, I'm going to make that video. And I just like tell myself like, that's what it is. Like, that's just a task of the day. And the other side of that is in my note section is I have it ongoing like FAQ or like certain topics that I know like my ideal client would want to hear about. So when I am kind of lacking in that creativity or I really can't think of something myself, like off the cuff, I go back in my notes and I have a full list that I constantly add to, you know what I mean, or revisit of just things that I know my ideal client wants to hear about, or my ideal agent too. So like I have those all listed. So if I have like kind of a funk or I can't figure out what I want to post about that day, I go back to my own notes and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I had that issue last week and I think someone else could be educated by it, you know? And then I go and post about it. I also pre-write captions with those things, with those topics. So if I'm really like I just can like, oh, I'm thinking about something or whatever, and I'll be in the doctor's office or something. I have like micro moments of work, right? I'm not a person that like time blocks, I micro moments. So I'll like be thinking about like an inspection or something. And I just type it out really quick, like a good caption if I want to kind of save for, it's kind of like making my own content vault, right? It's basically what I do.
I got a hack for you if you want it. I don't know if you do this or not. Do you ever use Siri on your phone to like add reminders for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So I do that throughout the entire day. So if I'm like, hey, add reminder, dad's at home inspections in 3 hours, I pick a random time. And then at the end of the day, I look at all my unread reminders and then put them in my idea bank too. And it's like, I love the thought around it because you could shoot the same video 10 times and have 10 completely different videos depending on your inspiration for that day. I think there's a fluidity in creativity and it's not scripted. And it's also why your videos do really well. But at the same time, you do have a structure and your structure is like, okay, this is where it goes. So it's not taking up space in my brain and giving me mind worms, and I'll get to it when I get to it. Right. That consistency, I think, is really cool.
And I'll have the general idea. And then as I'm kind of preparing myself for it, maybe I'm setting up a tripod, maybe I'm getting the outfit on that I want to wear in the video or whatever. I do go back in my videos and see if I like double up on the same outfit. I won't.
That's amazing.
For a while, but like little stuff. But then I'll be thinking of little details that I could add. Maybe it's something in the background, like a lockbox or something that even if it wasn't super real estate related, I can make little cues like I did when I was at the very beginning of always making little cues of being in real estate and trying to find little details that could just kind of accentuate the topic or just the fact that I'm in real estate. And I kind of do that as I kind of prep for it. I never have a script or I don't have anything like a prompter or anything like that. I just kind of go, and if I have to redo it, I have to redo it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
do you edit everything in app too? Like when you shoot it?
Yeah. I mean, once in a while, if it's like some weird, like The one I did recently, I'm falling on the bed and like reversing.
Which
I
one?
use it was from the conference. Yeah, the one at the pink dress, that first one.
Yeah.
That one I used an app just for the reverse factor when I'm coming back up.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
To my girl Chelsea's on there. Chelsea's a longtime friend of mine. She was on the podcast as well too.
I finally got to meet her in person at her conference last week. I was so excited.
I'll comment on your post to give you some engagement too after. She's awesome. No, that's really, really cool. And you can see, like, I think it's super organic too. So let's use this as a case study. Did you have an idea for this, or was this spur of the moment at the conference?
So almost every time I do a conference or I travel, I try to make a reel, because I tell myself, like, I don't need to be home. I don't need to be in my office to make reels, right? To like make video.
Yeah.
I can be wherever. And it also shows other aspects of my life, like traveling, conferences, and things like that. And so I always make a point to make a reel when I'm on a trip. And I love to do it somewhat around travel or in my hotel room, clearly not normally where I'm at, right? And it also kind of changes up the look of my news feed too. So it's not always this or something. And so I knew there was just like a couple audios that I really liked, as like far as like transitional type audios that I've just saved and like, oh yeah, I like those ones. And I had actually, this is the funniest part of this. So I had gotten that pink dress on and everything for one of the days of the conference. And the first outfit is what I had worn in the airport. But when we had gotten there, it was like 10 in the morning and we had a big group of girls that were like, we got to go eat. We got to do this. So I didn't actually make that when I showed up. His little secret. I had actually, when I'd gotten dressed for the conference in that pink dress, I'd gone to the conference. And when I got back to my room before dinner, I made the pink part where I just like did this. And then I fell down on the bed and I saved it.
Wow.
And then I went and got dressed back into my airport outfit.
You're a black belt, because you would never know that. But that's such a secret. Like, from a content creator perspective, Casey Neistat does that. Like, he'll do the like scene where he's biking up and he's like going through the tunnel. But like, he like went up, set up the camera, biked through the tunnel, went back on his bike, like went through the tunnel again. It's all the behind the scenes stuff people don't see, and the effort that actually goes into it, right?
Yeah, like those suitcases were empty. I had been unpacked for 2 days, like, and so like those suitcases, and so I had to act like I was pushing them, like they were heavy and they were completely empty. So like a couple times I actually fell down, like I tripped as I was trying to video it. And yeah, so it was.
We're going back to this. I need to see you pushing the suitcase. Like, oh, look at you. That's hilarious. She's committing to the process, people.
I even put the backpack on.
That's awesome. That's wild.
My hair was all cute before, and I had to go to dinner, so I just like grabbed it and just like pushed it up and acted like it was all messy. And then I just put the two videos together, and I used the transitional audio that I had already saved. So yeah.
Well, it's smart too, right? Because like, if I'm reading through the layers of the story you're telling me, first it's like, hey, Hannah, constant reminder, make sure people know you're actually in real estate. Until you develop that muscle, now you probably don't have to think about it, because it's natural. You're at the coffee shop, you're in your stories, you got Walmart, and like, it just comes up and you're not trying to talk about it. It just does, because it's top of mind. Now you're in a space where, tell me if I'm wrong, but like, if somebody called you to speak at Inman, you'd probably be okay with that. And like other podcasts and speaking opportunities. So you put out a piece of content showing that you're traveling and speaking as part of being an awesome real estate agent. Now you're kind of creating a life by design. Is that part of the process for you as well?
Yeah, I think it in general, it's always the growth factor. And I think that the people that are truly invested in your brand and you as a person, they want to see those successes, even if it doesn't necessarily relate to them as a client. Yeah. It does, because they're saying, oh, she's somewhat relevant. If she knows what the heck she's talking about, she's going to places and speaking on it. But it's also like your clients, the ones that are your true referrals and your true people that love you, the ones that you want to work with, they are excited to celebrate that with you.
Sure.
And they're excited to see those other parts of you and the other parts of your growth beyond just your transactions and what you do for them specifically. And I think that's what I learned, is like not trying to think so hard about what to or not to share. Sure. To like client facing type of things. And I think I finally realized, like, I would show up to a showing and my client's like, oh my gosh, how was your trip? That was so cool. Like, how many people were in the audience? That's nuts, and it's just more of a conversation thing, and a supportive kind of aspect from my clients, that I realized that posting about the other things and being open to new opportunities is a really good thing, and it's fun to share.
Yeah. And I can see that for sure. And like, just thinking outwardly, I see this And guess what? I know a lot of people that do speaking engagements and podcasts, and I've got two in mind that I want to share your name with. One is with the Sirhan crew. The other is actually very big podcast here locally. Send me a DM after. I'll make two connections for shows that you should definitely be on. But there's probably some negative self-talk like everybody else gets sometimes, where it's like, well, if I share that I'm going to speak an engagement, people don't think I'm actually a real estate agent. When in reality, like when I do this show, I get much better reach for my clients because like agents nationally know who I am. When I list a property, they look at it and like they maybe don't know somebody, but they know somebody who may be moving here. I now understand the dynamics of it. Did you ever go through that of having that negative self-talk around that?
Oh, always. Yeah. Like it's like the imposter syndrome, right? Like, and honestly, I get it almost like minutes before, especially when I speak in person. I'll get it like minutes before I go on. Right? Like I'm all amped. I'm ready. I got my slides. My slides are cute. I am ready to go. And then like I'm like getting introduced and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, really?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like that conscious, like, shut up, you know, kind of like you have to tell yourself of like, no, I did do this. I've worked hard. I've done this. And this is now where I'm at, you know? And I think that it's those little tiny moments where you can either kind of sink into it and allow it to just happen, or you can just like kind of like shut up, you know, like you're being silly. That's not true. You know, like I literally go through, I think, every single time. I even looked at Karin and Sarah before we got on, and I was like, are we literally supposed to be here? Like Glenda Baker's on that stage, you know, like Chelsea Pites is on that stage. Like I was like, what are we doing here? You know, and it was just like duh, this is why we're here. Someone asked us to be here to share our knowledge and to pour value into other people. And that's why we're here. And this is what we love to do.
Yeah. So, well, having known Glenda and Chelsea as well as I have, I got Chelsea's book actually behind me. It's literally right there. It's interesting because they're both real people. Like they've both been through everything that you're going through, and they're authentically themselves. And they realize, I think the one most powerful thing that I think the audience can get from this is worrying about people's opinions that don't matter is an absolute waste of time, because the people that are there to pour into you are there for you. Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, there's so many haters out there and most of the time it is coming from their own internal, you know, reasoning. But there's just, you always have to remember that there's so many people out there that love you. Right. And I wish that more people knew how much more people love them than we're hating on them, you know? And I think that's really important, regardless of what you do or what kind of content you want or don't want to do. It's just like people are out there that are going to love it. Of course, there's always going to be someone that's going to be able to hate on it. Right. But the people that love it are the ones that you want to pour into and be around and surround yourself with. So like, screw them and just do it. And the people that love you are going to be there for you. And I think that it's a hard concept to grasp because our brains are just so wired to focus on what the negative effect could be or will be, when no one's really actually valuing the positive outlook that it could be.
Yeah. It's a mindset piece. There's an agent on Twitter that is a pretty big following on TikTok that I was talking to the other day. And he's talking about how, like, you know, when he smoked, he's like, he didn't realize that it was like a self issue that he had. And I said, well, your TikTok trolls are the same thing. Like all your TikTok trolls, when they post those comments, like it's more of a them thing than it is a you thing. Now let's translate that away from social within industry and also with clients. Sometimes when people see success in other people, they want to tear their buildings down. Did you experience any of that when you were kind of growing, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, I call them mean girls, right? There's especially, I don't know, boys and girls, but
sure,
women tend to be pretty harsh on other women. So we've definitely dealt with mean girls in the past, and it's just one of those, right? You can either let it in your head or not, you know, and you can let it in there for a second and just then realize, just maybe give them grace and then just walk away. Because again, you turn your back to them and you face the people that love you instead. You know, so like giving them all that energy is only taking your own energy away and just like kind of feeding into what they're trying to do and accomplish, when I'd rather feed into what my loved ones are trying to accomplish. You know what I mean? Like there's always going to be mean people, and there's always just going to be like just people that are sour, you know, and that's just going to be the just life. Right.
Yeah. Like, when I was in hospitality, my first job was a bouncer. I was 155 pounds. I couldn't fight, so I had to learn to talk. But I also learned that like you can't get in a fight with somebody unless you engage with them. Like if somebody's trying to fight with you and you don't do anything, there's no fight. Right.
Yeah.
Same thing with that negative energy. Like the more you engage with it, the more you get dragged down into that versus you turn to the left and you got those people that love you. The more you walk towards them, the more you surround yourself with those people, the more you aspire to be like Glenda and Chelsea and, you know, look at them for inspiration. And they're the first people that will actually help you because they're not attached to the outcome. They don't want anything from you versus usually the other side of that coin, that negativity it's coming from people that may like you now, but are they going to be there when times are kind of tough for you, right?
Yeah. And I think that the biggest thing that we get hooked up on is like, maybe it's a negative person that you want in your life and you don't want them to be negative, but they are. And so you just deal with it and you let them suck your energy out of you because you want them in your life. And I think that's one of the hardest decisions that people have to make, regardless of social media, just in life. It's just like, I had to learn the hard way that even if it doesn't feel good in the moment or it makes you sad, sometimes you have to remove people out of your life or leave a situation because it's not good for you.
Sure.
And even if you want them there so bad and you want them involved in your life and you want to make them proud, right? You want to see them proud of you. They're a negative aspect and they're just going to continue to suck your energy. And you have to make that hard decision to just bye, you know, gotta move on. And I think that relates to social media too, is realizing like, hey, I'm not opposed to hitting that block button.
Yeah.
At all, right? Like not opposed. And honestly, I love hateful comments. I try to just like, because half the time, to be honest, they're lacking in intelligence. Most of the time, the negative comments are never that intelligent. They're usually just really rude or like actually completely false. So I love just responding nicely. I mean, I'm Minnesotan, so passive aggression is our middle name. So I'm very good at being nice with a smile, but actually telling you you're wrong, right? So I have no problem responding. But if someone is really intense or blowing up my DMs, I am perfectly fine blocking because I've learned in life, you just kind of have to let that negativity just be gone. Even if you're like, oh, I wish I could just like turn their minds around. I wish I could prove them wrong. It's not worth your energy.
You're not going to get Jeremy Cady was on the podcast and he's got a really good YouTube channel. And I was asking this question. He's like, I engage. He's like, I say, thank you for being my biggest fan over and over. He's like, it's a nonsensical response to some of the stuff that they're saying, but he's like, it drives them nuts. And then eventually they just go away. Right. And he's like, he does it for the algorithm. But when I got back on Twitter this summer, holy, like I got dragged into 2 or 3 conversations. I'm like, why am I talking to these people? So I like had to create a framework and rule set for my engagement. So like I allow one comment. I'll literally DM you my cell number. I'm like, if you want to call me and talk, let's talk. And never once have I had anybody call me. And I'm like, well, you don't want to have a conversation with me. You want to talk at me. And so everybody can see you talking to me. And then you want to disappear, which I'm not here for that. There's a Facebook user that can't see your name because you didn't allow StreamYard to see your name. That's another thing. But Hannah, close doors and leave windows open, cracked open for new energies to enter. Like, I think that's an important point of like, here's my ground rules. Here's how we can interact. If you're not willing to do that, you know, that's fine. I'm going to go this way. You're going to go that way. That could be anything. That could be partnerships in real estate. That could be clients. That could be social media. I think it's a really, really important. And I'm super happy that you highlighted it. Another question I had for you, just kind of picking your brain. How do you juggle everything? How do you juggle content creation, being an active real estate agent, a mom? What's Hannah's secret to success there? Maybe it's just intuitive, but I'd love you to extrapolate that for the audience.
I mean, I'm kind of a hot mess sometimes, not gonna lie. But I think everybody is.
Yep.
You know, that's normal. But I think that I've learned like the hard way to like lean into your support system. You know, I think that's a big thing is just like letting go. And I still struggle with this sometimes, but letting go of that whole, like, I have to do it all or I'm not good enough, or like, I can't then just say proudly that I do it all. Right. Like it's that thing. And realizing like handing certain things off. I have an assistant now. So a lot of those kind of like small little detail things that I like to do to be organized, I've handed to her and say, hey, I'd love for you to do this so that I can still be organized, but not be like trying to do it all. Right.
Yeah.
I have what I think to be a really good schedule with my daughter, because I get her Sunday nights. I basically have her through the school week. And then she goes to her dad's on the weekends. So for real estate, that's actually great because I get to do the open houses or do my showings or whatever the case is on the weekends. I spend like quality time with friends too, right? Or my boyfriend going on date night, whatever it is. And those things are accomplished without feeling like I'm leaving her with a babysitter all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm able to then have a showing agent throughout the week for those evening showings that I would rather be with my daughter. Maybe I'm being her Uber for the night with soccer and swim lessons and all those things, but my clients are still taken care of. And it's just an expectation you set with them up front, right? It's like, hey, I like to be at all your showings, but I do have this amazing showing agent. And I also have a team of 30 other agents that all step in when need be, that will all take care of you in the moment that I'm not available at that exact moment.
Yep.
You know, and I think that it's about setting expectations with your clients for certain operational stuff like that. And then just giving yourself grace, because there's things that just slip through the cracks. You know, I don't do a reel every single day. I don't put that on me. I've made a habit to do stories all the time that I do feel like that should be a daily thing, or at least mostly daily.
Sure.
But I don't put that on myself anymore, that I have to make a reel every single day or I have to do X amount per week. I do it when it comes to me, and it comes a lot more natural that way and a lot more creative than like being structured in that sense. I have a lot of other structured things that I do, but creation, as far as content goes, is not. It's just, it flows as my day goes on. And that's the part that's really hard to help with other agents, because it's not something I can teach. You know, yeah. It's just like, hey, I let it kind of just flow. And I have a creative moment, I make it happen, you know? So
and that's different for everybody, right? Like somebody's version of creating could be writing a blog or a Twitter thread or making a video or taking a picture. Like it really depends on the person. I think you've done a great job of being intuitive though, and like training yourself. Cause I can tell you, like the hundreds of agents that, you know, I've coached over the years and internally and externally, a lot of times I'm like, just tell people what you do. Like if I could teach you one thing, it's just make sure that the opportunities to connect somebody looking for our house in Minnesota with Hannah. Like I do that. Like I do a lot of referral business because it's top of mind. It took me a decade to build it out. That's one piece of it. But I think you're also very intuitive at like looking at the different aspects of your life and looking for those consistent blocks to build the life that you want. And content creation is a piece of that. And being a great mom is a piece of that. And being a great real estate agent is a piece of that. You're not tied to this image of perfection that a lot of agents try to portray, understanding that there's like a certain amount of percentage of error that's going to happen in all of those things, but does the whole picture come together to create the person that you are striving to become? Is that kind of accurate as to how you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just finding little efficient, like tiny little tweaks that you can do throughout the day that make you just that much more efficient. And they kind of all stack together, and then being intuitive about like, okay, today I'm not going to accomplish that, but that's okay, because tomorrow I will. You know, today I'm going to focus on this. And there's no life that you could live where you can focus on everything all at once. Then you would just fail at everything. You know, it's like, I know where I need to put my focus on each day. And that sometimes changes halfway through the day, right? Like literally tonight, I have to go to a client's house at 4:30, which if you're a mom with kids or dad or parent or at all, 4:30 is a really tough time, because you're picking up from school, going to activities, doing this, like, when am I going to feed you? You know, like all the things. And he needs to meet at 4:30. So instead of like panicking and freaking out about it, call up my boyfriend's mom. She lives 10 minutes down the road. She's retired. Yep. She's super helpful. It's like, hey, if I drop her off, would you hang out with her for about an hour? I'm going to be back. She might. And then it was like, I'm going to strain myself to try to get back in time to get her to soccer. Well, actually, I said to her, worst case, I might need you to bring her to soccer. I was just put it out there, right? Like no shame. And she came back and said, don't even rush. Yeah. Of course I'll take her.
She's super excited. She probably gets at that time too, right? And everything too. But you have this, if you don't say it, you don't give her that opportunity to say yes, right?
And it's a pride thing too. Yeah. You know, it's again, letting go of that I can't do it all, or I can do it all kind of attitude. And so now I'm meeting with my client when he wants to. I'm getting that accomplished. My daughter's taken care of, and I'm gonna pick her up from soccer, no problem. And it wasn't a big deal or like a freak out moment. And I think that 2 years ago, I would have freaked out, you know?
Yeah, we all do. Yeah, it's that falling forward energy. You definitely see it in newer agents too. I'm like, I get called for things all the time. I'm an air traffic controller and a firefighter. I'm no longer a real estate agent. That's literally my job. And I'm like, oh, that's like a 1 out of 10. I'm like, this just happened. And they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, so it is what it is. I love that perspective. I'm going to ask you a couple rapid fire questions too. And I'm going to get you out of here because I know you got a busy day ahead of you and I want to value your time. first off, are there like any apps or little hacks that you use to kind of manage all of this stuff?
I have been using, so Trello is
Yep.
the system I use for pretty much most of my transactions, marketing,
Okay.
things like that. I use Trello a lot. That's really kind of the biggest thing that I pour into right now.
Any social media apps that you're loving right now, or just little editing, or it's all in app?
It's all, I mean, I use, for that one that I did reverse or whatever, I use InShot,
Cool.
one word, InShot, for like random little edits, but I would say 90% of my content is in app, and just kind of tweaking what I know. I know Instagram likes that, they
Sure.
want stuff on
They,
there.
they want the green screens. They all do, right? Like even people should stay away from CapCut right now because like it's something that is not loved by a lot of the social media platforms except TikTok, right?
No, yeah, exactly. So I really stay in app as much as possible, and I don't try to make it too complicated.
Okay. One piece of advice you would give mini Hannah, who's getting into real estate for the first time ever, if she walked into your office and looked up at you as her Glenda Baker, what piece of advice would you give her?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'll tell her to settle the hell down first. Take a breath. But I think that what I wish I knew when I first started too was just like, when you get your real estate license and you're planning on doing this full time, you are starting a business, right? Like it's not just that you get a license so that you can go just like sell stuff and like look at pretty houses and like make money. You're starting a business, and you have to structure your days like that. You have to brand yourself that way. You have to have that full mindset going in that you are starting a business. If I knew that, if I had like understood that concept in 2014, it would have made my life a lot better, or a lot sooner. But I've learned that, right? I've learned now. I don't regret it, but I wish that I would have known that mindset a lot sooner. Is just treat it like a business. You are your own boss, which isn't as glamorous as it sounds, and you have to really run it every day like your own company. But
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
I love that piece of advice. How has failure shaped your life?
Oh, woof. Quite a bit, to be honest with you. I definitely feel like, especially when I had my daughter and I was with her dad for a little bit and then I left, I felt that was a failure, right? It's like I took that away from my daughter, like her mom and dad in the same household. Now it's a total blessing. So I try to look at all the failures that I've made as actual blessings, which I know that it is. But I feel like failure has allowed me to figure out how to process the failure instead of just like kind of either shut that door really quick and pretend that didn't happen and move on, or soak in it. And I feel like I've learned how to process failure a lot better and look at that as a silver lining and look at it like, how is this going to make me better next year? How is this going to make my daughter better? And how is this going to look to my daughter of how I handle this situation? Because I do feel like that, I don't remember what that saying is, but it's not what happens to you, but it's how you respond to it or whatever. That totally butchered that saying. But that's kind of like how I play into failure is, okay, it's not about what's happening to me, whether it was my doing or someone else's doing, but like, how am I going to handle it and move forward? And I think that's the kind of the solution based mindset versus like staring at the problem and just saying like, oh my God, crap. It's just like, all right, how am I going to make this better? And that's how I've always looked at it. And I do feel like it's kind of shaped me into a better decision maker in the moment and just going into that solution mindset right off the bat.
Yeah, ultra key. I think you can't control how other people act towards you. You can only control how you react to their actions. There was even something you posted the other day where you talked about how, I think you were on a podcast. You're like, I got mind worms. I flubbered. I said something. And I remember thinking about, I'm like, that's actually a benefit. I meant to message you. I think I forgot about it, but genuinely, like they actually say people in podcasts that are more effectively human will connect better with an audience, even to the point where wearing this is a net negative. When I'm making content, I should be wearing a t-shirt or like being a normal person because the person watching it is wearing a t-shirt. So I meant to say that as a piece of encouragement. I know you think like that, but I'm happy you extrapolated that for the audience. The most important question, because you made time for our audience. My platform is yours. Is there a message somewhere you want me to point everybody? You can ask anything of the audience. Pretend the entire world is watching. What can we do for Hannah?
Well, I mean, just connect with me on Instagram. I love connecting with people, whether it be agents or clients or whatever. I really just value connection all over the country, all over the world. I think that's really cool. It makes me excited. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't have a huge ask. I just like helping and putting value in places that typically I wouldn't be able to enter. So I appreciate you having me on because this has been really fun. But I do, because of being asked, it's out of my comfort zone, but I will be putting out like a course of some sort. I just don't want to be that normal course on Instagram.
Sure.
But I will be putting something out. So really just keep in touch with me on Instagram because that's my jam. That's where I'm at. And news will be coming soon on that. But yeah, I'll be in Seattle next week. Wait, was it 2 weeks from now? If anyone's in Seattle and they want to come to an event, just shoot me a DM. And it's going to be like a workshop kind of event for Instagram. I was there earlier this year and did like a presentation, and now they asked me to come back and do like a hands-on workshop. So
amazing. Well, and I'm going to plug you into those 2 other podcasts. Thank you for making time for the show. If you're listening to the audio, make sure to share this with somebody that you think could benefit from it. Make sure to jump in and leave us a rating, connect with Hannah, and make sure that you make that human connection. That's literally why I do this show. I'm not selling coaching. I'm not going to recruit you. I just want to connect you with the most amazing people on the planet. And thank you for making time for the show, Hannah.
no problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.